Good morning, everyone. And we are live on my YouTube channel, which is Angeline Mitchell. So please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Angeline Mitchell. And welcome to another live podcast episode on my YouTube channel. And thank you to all my followers who have liked and subscribed. So please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Angeline Mitchell. Welcome to my podcast, Let's Break the Silence with Angeline. And please like and subscribe to my podcast on Anchor FM, Spotify, Google, Apple, and all the live streams. And my podcast is to help women amplify their voice and break the silence on domestic abuse and narcissistic abuse. We all have a voice, and our voices need to be heard. So if you're tuning live right now, let us know. Put a comment below. Let us know where you are tuning in from so we could give you a proper shout out. But I'm really super excited to bring on my special guest, Sybil, coming. And I am so excited she is here. And Sybil is a licensed professional counselor and approved clinical supervisor who is specialized in working with victims and survivors of domestic violence and narcissistic abuse for over a decade, including the youngest witnesses of abuse. She is the founder of Arvada Therapy Solutions, a small group private practice in Arvada, Colorado, and the creator of Rising Beyond Power and Control, a membership community supporting women survivors of abuse. She recently started the Rising Beyond podcast to continue to offer opportunities for survivors to feel seen, heard, and learn how to use their own strength to heal. So I am so excited that we connected. So without further ado, good morning, Sybil.
Good morning. How are you?
I am doing great. Weather's lovely here in upstate New York this morning. It is 60 degrees already, and it's a little bit past 11. So tell us where you are tuning live from and the time where it is where you are.
Yes, I am in Arvada, Colorado, which is just west of the Denver metro area, kind of in between Denver and the mountains.
Right.
And it right now is kind of gloomy and gray, but we'll be in the 60s later today. But we just had snow like Thursday night into Friday. So that's just the way, the roller coaster weather of Colorado. It's
right.
what we do. It's what we do here. And it's just after 9.
After 9 a.m. Isn't that something? I mean, Colorado, it's like 4 seasons in one day or 2 days, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It'll be, you have to wear all different things, bring everything with you at all times.
Oh, geez.
Because,
that's interesting.
Right, 1 minute it is sunny and in the 60s, and then maybe later that evening it's going to snow.
Wow. Oh, my gosh. I have look who's here, Dr. Marnie. Dr. Marnie was on my podcast last week on Monday, and look at this. Great to tune into another. Thank you very much, Dr. Marnie.
Yeah,
she's amazing.
I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, she is amazing. And by the way, all our live podcast episodes launch on Monday mornings at 7 a.m. Eastern time. So please listen to this incredible interview. I'm just so excited for you to be here today. Look at this. See, love. See, we're all connected.
Isn't that small world? It feels, everyone that's working kind of in this, environment is connected in some way.
Exactly. And today we are going to be talking about dealing with post-separation abuse, litigation, and co-parenting. But the first question I want to ask you, who is Sybil and what lit you up to go into this field and empower domestic abuse survivors and narcissistic abuse survivors? Tell us.
Yeah, I didn't come into this arena the way a lot of people do. I didn't ever think that I would be working with domestic abuse, narcissistic abuse. It was not even in my awareness, honestly, to be honest, very naive about it. I went to grad school to be a family and child therapist was my goal. I wanted to work with kids, and went through grad school and was in a couple and family program, they barely even talked about domestic violence at all. So I got one little snippet in my couples or families issues class, which was basically, if there's domestic violence, don't do couples work. That was it. That was it. And so I didn't know how to assess for it. I knew I wasn't going to like work with a lot of couples. So like it didn't matter, but it actually really matters. And every arena or environment I worked in with kids, so I worked in a hospital setting, I worked in an agency setting, I work in private practice, a small group practice. There is this dynamic with the parents of the kids that I worked with when I initially almost solely worked with kids that initially couldn't put my finger on. I didn't know what it was. And so it was really trying to investigate what is this dynamic? And when I did know up front that it was domestic abuse, I didn't really know how to work with it. And that really bothered me, right? If I don't know how to work with things, I'm going to ethically people how they need to be treated. So I went to great lengths to really find and read everything I could, because there's actually not a whole lot of training for mental health clinicians working with this population. So kind of fast forward, I started working with it. I was always told that I was good at working with domestic violence. Don't even know what that means still, but it really became a passion when I was really kind of in the family court system. So on occasion, I am subpoenaed to testify on behalf of the children that I see in my practice. And it seemed like 50% of the time, it didn't matter what I said on the stand, even if there were some possible safety concerns or anything, that children were put in harm's way, put with parents who weren't safe. And I didn't understand. Like, that makes zero sense, right? That's just mind-boggling to me. Someone who cares so much about the safety of children. And so I just went down the rabbit hole and started doing all the research, talking to people, doing the thing, and you know, going from my experiences as well of, wow, domestic abuse and domestic violence, narcissistic abuse, which is kind of a newer term that I'm happy to chat about. It is so secret and so misunderstood. And there's very little knowledge, right? All these misconceptions about it, that when the survivors of it would say that there was domestic violence in, you know, the couple of these kids, they actually had worse outcomes with regard to custody.
Wow.
So they would not be offered, you know, and depends on state. Here we are really a 50-50 state for the majority, but they would be deemed like unfriendly, which is actually a court term, which is so gross, but seemingly uncooperative and trying to kind of alienate and take the kids away from the other parent. And just by using that term, just by putting it out there in court that there's been violence in the home. And so I just couldn't stand by and just watch this happen. So that really is how I dove in, you know, head first. And now this is really the only adults I work with in my practice are survivors, and started the community, the Rising Beyond community, because I've seen over time, over the last couple decades, not couple decades, I'm not that old, but over a decade, that the way to really accelerate someone's healing from domestic violence and narcissistic abuse is in community and having the right support people all around you. It is amazing how exponentially like faster your healing can be from this, and especially dealing with post-separation abuse and litigation, co-parenting with an abusive ex. It's paramount.
Oh, I can just imagine. I can just imagine. What is narcissistic abuse and what is domestic violence? Because I know it's kind of like two different. You talk about that on your website, and please tell the viewers and the listeners what's the difference between the both.
Yeah, so I'm sure that if you've been in the advocacy world for a while, or even just knowing anything, you're on any social media platform, you've noticed there's a huge increase in the term narcissist and narcissistic abuse. I mean, it's really like gone up a lot. And there is some merit to this. So the differences that I see is domestic violence is not necessarily narcissistic abuse, because that term narcissistic abuse really speaks to the qualities of the partner, of the abusive partner. So domestic violence, not all perpetrators of domestic violence have narcissistic personality disorder or any of those cluster B personality disorders. And narcissistic abuse, that could be with your intimate partner. That could also be a family member, a coworker, a boss. So it's really specific to the qualities of the partner, which I think if you are with someone and they are really skilled at the mask, so they are not even remotely, right, who they show you up front, who they show people in the world, they look like the loving, doting, amazing, like high empathy. They look that way to the outside world, but it's a mask. And so there are differences between the two. What I tell people is that domestic violence is not necessarily narcissistic abuse, but narcissistic abuse is always domestic violence when it's with your intimate partner.
Right.
But there's this like the misconceptions about domestic violence prevents a lot of women, is mostly who I work with in my practice. I do work with men too, which is part of this. There's a myth and misconception about what a victim of domestic violence looks like. It is low education, low, economic status, lots of kids, cigarette in their mouth, maybe drugs and alcohol. There's this idea of that's what a victim of domestic violence is, where that is not reality at all. Domestic violence is in every community, gender, race, socioeconomic status, education level. It crosses everywhere. And so what I've really seen is that because there's that idea out there that a victim of domestic abuse looks a certain way, people who do not identify with that are much more comfortable with the term narcissistic abuse.
And you see a narcissistic abuse a lot. You ready for this? On TikTok.
Yes.
There is not a day that goes by. I mean, I have a TikTok channel. So, I'll go on the news feed in the morning. They call it the FYP. And not a day goes by that I see narcissistic abuse. It's really being brought out in the open now, on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, yes, but I think more so on TikTok.
Yes, I agree. And that there's this, right, this misconception that domestic violence and domestic abuse is physical abuse. Like you have to be hit, you have to be strangled, you have to, have something thrown at you to be domestic abuse. And that's not it at all. And so a lot of people really use the term narcissistic abuse to look at that psychological and emotional abuse, manipulation, and gaslighting that does occur with really most people that have pretty high narcissistic qualities, even if they don't, they can't be diagnosed, like they're not diagnosable, they don't reach that criteria.
Right.
But that manipulative quality, that coercive control, that there is no physical violence present. And so, right, like the legal definition of domestic violence is about physical violence. And so I think narcissistic abuse, that term really allows people who are being abused in all these other ways, language, to have, to allow them to understand their experience and to connect with others who are experiencing the same thing.
Right. Exactly. Well put. I mean, domestic violence, I was physically abused, but I was also, the verbal abuse is a lot worse.
Ongoing.
It's ongoing all the time. And that just throws a lot of young girls and women into the rabbit hole.
Yes.
And they just don't know how. And, a lot of them feel stuck. They feel that they feel trapped, especially with children, which I want to talk about. I want to talk about the litigation and the co-parenting.
Yes.
Because I can imagine what that is like, So let's talk about that.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's a whole different form of hell.
Mm.
Because, right, we know that going no contact from your abuser is the quickest and best way to heal. And in criminal cases, you have an order of protection. Stay away from, stay away. Family court, it's like, actually, I need you to communicate every 48 hours and be cordial enough and make decisions together. And so
I know. I can't imagine what that's like.
Right? Like they're forced to do this.
Right, because I broke free. I completely broke free and I have no children. So for me, that's a blessing. But for these, especially the young girls, how do they deal with this?
Yeah, it is really, really difficult. One, because I did too, but you have this naive sense or idea that the family court system, like any court system, is about truth. And that you're going to go and tell the truth and it's going to be okay. And unfortunately, that is not how it works. And so, yeah, so there are a lot of things you can do, but yeah, you have to continue communication with your partner. You have to potentially see them. You're going to have to deal with like counter parenting, where your children are with your ex-partner for visitation and they are going to undermine every possible thing that you've done, or they're going to talk about how horrible you are and how you're breaking the family apart and how you don't want them to see their dad ever. Or it goes both ways. There are higher rates in women, but I see this in men too. But all of these pieces that you then have to deal with every day, and you will get in trouble with the courts if you don't.
Okay.
So it is just this balance of, how do I heal?
Yeah.
When I still have to deal with this on a daily basis.
So
it's really tricky.
Yeah, I can. So when you worked with your clients, what are some of the strategies that you teach them, especially with post-separation abuse, the litigation that goes on in family court? Because I'm sure that's not fun either. I know that that's not fun. I went to family court to get an order of protection. And here I am with no children. Okay. And I took off and went to Long Island and stayed for 1 week to, with my relatives so I could just get away. But I cannot imagine. So how do you work with your clients in terms of dealing with the co-parenting, the litigation, and what steps can they take to heal from that?
Yeah. And it's definitely like a many-pronged approach. If it could just be right. So if there aren't children and there's not like stalking or any of those post-separation abuse techniques when there aren't kids, because there are some partners who will stalk and follow and harass and continue to abuse. However, when you have children, it brings this whole other component. So there's there are things we can do therapeutically, but what I've really learned is that there's also this separate, work that needs to be done that's logistical. Right? How can you, and they kind of integrate, they kind of combine of like, how do you email back and forth with your ex so you're not triggered every time, right? So the minute your notification dings that you have an email from them, like your heart just like goes into your throat. You feel like you're going to throw up. Like that anxiety is there immediately because you don't know what's in that email, right? So one of the things is really setting boundaries around written documentation. I always recommend a co-parenting communication app. There's a lot of them. There's like Peaceful Parent, Talking Parents, My Family Wizard. There's a bunch of different apps. And the reason that is so important is because the emails sent through there are not editable afterwards, and they are court admissible. So it
Wow.
allows you to show the patterns.
I like that. I
So
never
that's
did
really
that.
important, is to be able to, because documentation, constant documentation, it's like your second full-time job or third full-time job because you're raising kids too, right? Like there's all these pieces, but you do need to document all the things. And so if you haven't left yet and you have children,
Okay.
start documenting now. Start documenting before you leave. You're taking pictures of holes in the wall. You are writing down dates when things happened. What was your response? What was their response? What level of intensity
Right.
was it?
Right.
How did it affect the kids? Right? You are documenting because you're going to go to those temporary orders, which is that first hearing when they're like, okay, you've got a divorce coming. We need to order the basics. Who's going to live in the house? Who's, financially, what are their things going to look like until final orders, and where the kid's going to be. So you need to document beforehand if you're there. If not, I work with people in that place too that were that naive, like everything's going to work out great. But I work so much on how to respond to these emails. And so we look at the different techniques. So there's like the gray rock technique, which is ideal for if you're not dealing with family court. And that is being as boring as a gray rock, right? You're not going to supply them with any fuel to continue. So if they have this rant that's like a full page long, but there's only one question you need to answer, and it's a yes or no, you just respond with yes or no. That's gray rock. But if you're dealing with family court, you have to do something. I call it speckled rock.
Okay.
Other people call it yellow rock. Kind of depends on like where you are geographically, I think, of what you call it. If we saw a yellow rock here in Colorado, it would be gold. So it'd be like the most interesting thing on planet Earth. So speckled rock. And what you're going to do is you're going to speckle in niceties, because the court needs to see that you are willing to encourage the relationship between the children and their other parent and all of the other things. You do not want to show the court that you are what your partner is going to lie and say you are.
Mm-hmm.
So you are going to have these pleasant emails, but you're still going to hold boundaries and only answer the question. So instead of just a no, so maybe the question is switching visitation weekends.
Oh, there you go.
It's a really common one.
I know.
Right. And so your initial answer is like, yeah, you think, yeah, I asked you that a couple weeks ago because I had a funeral and you said no. So no, never, hate you. Like that's what comes up. You can't write that.
Oh my God.
You have to write something like, unfortunately, we have been unable to communicate effectively together. And, I'm trying to think of the right word, but we haven't been able to work on this together in a way that feels healthy and safe for the children. So unfortunately, I am going to say no based on and follow the court orders by Judge so-and-so on such and such date. Okay. So your initial thought is just like, no, but you got to like speckle it in the niceties. And so I also tell people, you are writing these emails as if the judge is going to read every single email.
Oh my gosh.
That's how you're writing these emails. The judge is going to read everyone. They don't read everyone. But the one where you blow up in the email, that's the one that's going to be in evidence. That's the one that's going to be showed in court. So that's really hard. So there's that like logistical piece of learning how to communicate, setting boundaries, but then there's the therapeutic piece of how do you regulate yourself as you're doing that horrible thing that makes you want to throw up? How do you regulate your anxiety and manage your fight or flight or your fawning responses or your freeze responses, whatever comes up for you?
Right.
Well, you have to do that work. So it's
exactly
right. So it's like, if we didn't have to deal with that, man, healing, boom, breeze, not a breeze, but it's very different, very different.
Very different. Right. Exactly. See, and the court system. Okay, let's talk about the court system for a second, because I remember one time I was in court with my attorney, and there was a couple in front of us, so they had children.
Mm-hmm.
emails back and forth. And then I think the husband, or I don't recall exactly what it was, but one of them broke into their email and they were talking about the kids back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And you know what the judge said? The judge said, don't use your children as pawns.
Yes.
That stood out in my, and that still sticks out in my mind because there's a lot of couples, unfortunately, that do that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So how do they, where do you step in to, help them find, to help them resolve it? Because I could just imagine that's not fun. That's not a fun place to be in.
No, and I think the focus a lot of times is, especially what I see is like there's like a different in the win, right? So winning for the survivor looks like keeping themselves and their children safe. That's their win, right?
Right.
And their partner's win is maintaining power and control and destroying your life. Doesn't matter what it costs. And so really focusing on that long game, because unfortunately, I hate being the Debbie Downer. If you have children with a narcissistic or abusive partner, you're in this for the long haul. And so that, like when you're first healing from domestic abuse in general, the first step is education.
I was just going to say that, education.
Yes. And so same thing with if you're going through family court. I don't like to scare the crap out of people. And they need to know what to expect, because when you know what to expect, it's not going to shock you as much. It still will. There will still be things that your jaw drops. Like, I really believed that everyone, like there were consequences if you told lies on the stand. Nope, not really. Nope. They can say whatever the heck they want on the stand most of the time in family court. And then they say, well, it's he said, she said.
Right.
So really giving them that understanding of, if you have really young kids, you're going to be in this for the long term. Like you're in this for the long haul. We're running a marathon, not a sprint. We focus on perceived wins for your partner. So they're looking at the short term. And so if they're freaking out and financial is their biggest thing, and they want the snowmobile. Is the snowmobile going to harm you? And give them the snowmobile, and they're going to be like, ha, I got the snowmobile.
Yeah.
And they're going to feel the win. Right? They're going to be like, ha, I win it. And to you, you're like, does that impact my long-term goal of safety for myself, my children? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. So that helping people see the perceived win, like, is this a battle worth fighting? Is it going to help me reach that end goal of safety? And if it's not going to help you reach that end goal of safety, it's probably not one to fight.
It's not worth fighting. Right. Like you brought out the example of the snowmobile. Who cares?
Right. And if it's something really important to them and they think they're going to get you, and that it builds them up and makes them feel powerful over the situation, but it doesn't do anything, it's not going to harm you in the long term, let that piece go. I will say, and I learned this recently, not like super recently, but in the last couple of years, because you continue to learn, right? Like you just continue to learn as you go, that so many of the women I work with are like, I will give up everything financial just to have my kids. I will give up everything. I'll give up the house. I'll give up the 401k. I'll give up everything because I need to keep my babies safe. And yes, if I was in that situation, I'd probably feel the same way, because the safety of my kids is the most important. But here's what everyone needs to know is that once the divorce is final, the financial piece, apart from child support, is final. So you can't come back and be like, oh, actually I need more money, or like it's final, but custody is not final. Like visitation time is not final.
Okay.
So if you give up every financial means to appease your partner, and they're going to say, sure, you can have the kids, 80% of the time, and I'll take them this amount because then I, whatever it is. And then you're left in financial ruin. In a year, they can come back to seek full custody of the kids, and you no longer have any finances to pay an attorney to go through the process, and they can win it. And they do. They have that financial security to do that. So that's what I've seen kind of over the years, is that so many women, their focus truly is, in fact, every woman in my membership in like the community that I run, their number one focus is the safety of their kids. That's their fear.
Wow.
That's their greatest fear. And so many women will give up everything if they have this idea that they're going to have safety for their kids. But this instance, you really have to look again long term. It's not if he comes back and files a motion, it's when will I have the finances to fight that in a year or two.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
So huge. And it's something that, early on as I worked with this, I knew it, but I didn't realize the impact. And now I've just seen the impact. And it's so important to let women know, because before you're going through a divorce, you don't know what the heck's going on. You don't know these things. And if you don't have a great relationship with your attorney, that's another thing that's really, really important, is finding an attorney that gets it. Finding an attorney that understands what it's like to kind of fight against one of those cluster B high conflict personalities. Because a lot of attorneys, like if you just ask, do you work with domestic abuse? A lot of them are like, yeah, I do all the time. But do they actually work with it? Do they actually understand it? A lot of the times, no. So the questions to ask need to be a little bit more specific of, what do you do when? Like, give me specific examples of, if this happens, what is the, how do you mitigate it? How do you handle it? And that will let you know a little bit better as if they get it.
Right.
Is
exactly.
more specific about what you're asking as you're interviewing that attorney, because that attorney is in court. That is your support person. That is who is going to share the story, right? Their job is to tell the story, to show what you need shown in the court process, to show the patterns, to show the danger, to show the violence, to show manipulation. It's their job to show that story. So if they don't understand narcissistic abuse, domestic violence, or how a high conflict person is going to come at you in court, then they're not the attorney for you.
Forget it. Fortunately, I had a good relationship with my attorney.
Yes.
I paid her a lot of money, but it was $10,500 to be exact.
Yes.
But I was finally free, and that opened up a whole new world for me. So,
yes. Freedom, like joy, like you can feel joy.
Okay. There you go. And I know that you have resources on your website.
Yes.
And I did put up your website. So tell us about the resources. And it looks like that you have a free online course in there, because
yes. So very often we offer, especially as I'm working with clients and I'm working with the members in my communities. So the Rising Beyond Power and Control is the community, the Rising Beyond community. I'll see themes come up, right? And as I see themes come up that are across the board themes, then people need resources around that.
Right.
So every so often I just offer free courses or free, kind of handouts or resources or whatever it might be, because, and usually when I'm offering them, it's because over the last month, this is the underlying theme that I am seeing in the community, in my practice, and then even across kind of the social media channels.
Right.
This is the issue coming up. So just recently, this one's going to take a little more to get out there because it's going to be an intense, lot of work on my end. But really what we've been talking about, like that documentation piece for court, I am working with an attorney on putting together a workshop and
Oh,
like
good.
tangible, downloadable resources of what you need to document. Like, what is actual evidence? What documentation? Because you could spend hours and hours and hours writing every little thing, but what is actually going to help move the needle in court?
There you go.
And so, yeah, working with a couple of people to create that resource and that workshop, because this is what I'm seeing right now is that, people go to court, they think they have evidence and proof of things, and the judge is like, nah, that doesn't because it's not exactly what they need. So, yes, they were abusing you. And unfortunately, the judges don't actually care about that in family court. Like, that's crazy, but they don't. But how is this affecting the way they make decisions about custody or decision making? Right. So, what you think might be really helpful may not move the needle for family court. So, yeah, I'm working together with some people to set that up and do a workshop with people to do that. So, that's kind of so all throughout the year, there'll be free or really low cost resources. And then again, if you do a course or you do a workshop or a webinar or whatever, and you're like, oh my gosh, I actually need more support on this because this is exactly what I'm going through right now. That's what the membership is for, is to
good.
Offer that, not just be like, oh, okay, you did my workshop and you got just like this much information, but you need more, you need hand holding on doing it. That's really the membership is for people that really find themselves in a spot. They get a little bit of information that is helpful, right? Like, oh, I can document this, but maybe they have panic attacks every time they have to, do the emails, or, every time they go to court or something like that. That's really what we're there for.
All right. That's good. That's awesome. So please go to Sybil's website, risingbeyondpc.com.
Yes, I appreciate that. The more we as advocates can work together, like the more impact we will make.
Exactly. The more impact we are going to make. Absolutely. And I'm glad you're going to be offering workshops, because that's important, especially,
Yes.
With couples who are divorced going through that, visitation. That could be a huge mess. Trust me, I have friends who went through it.
Yes.
Yeah, that could be a huge mess. So in closing, because we're coming up to almost the top of the hour, what's a special message that you would like to share with the viewers, replay viewers, and my listeners today on the pod?
I think the number one message that I have and that I always want to share somehow is there is hope in healing from this, in learning to manage post-separation abuse, right? You can hear that, like, you have a 4-year-old and you're going to be dealing with post-separation abuse till they're 18. That sounds so horrible, right? That's like so defeating. And it's not going to be that full 14 years, because you can get to a place where you feel confident in how you're managing it. You are not triggered every time you get that email message. You know exactly how to respond. So you don't have all that anxiety around it. And so there is hope. There is a lot of information out there to get you where you need to be. But I think that focus of, right, finding your people, that inner circle of support that can help you and be around you when the times are hard, will, allow you to, live that freedom. Like, imagine like being in the present moment and experiencing joy and not being anxious 24/7.
Exactly. Imagine that.
It's there. Like, it's possible. It's very possible. I've seen it over and over and over and over again. And I know that you can have it too.
Exactly. So, I'm so happy that you're here today with us, Sybil. Thank you so much for sharing a lot of valuable resources, information. We talked about, narcissistic abuse, domestic violence, education, for women, especially when it comes to family court. There's just so many things here. So please go to Sybil's website here. And do you book a call, like a clarity call?
Yeah, sometimes we do a call. We have
Okay.
myself and 2 other team members. Usually myself and Sabrina do,
Oh, good.
the calls, and, if you're just trying to get a sense of who I am and what we do, there's, a free membership, which is, like, emails and resources I send, and that gives you a sense of what is what is Sybil about? What's a Rising Beyond community
Yeah.
about? And I have had people just from the emails, shoot me a message, months after a certain email came out, and they said, I used this specific thing in court this week and it worked.
There you
Right?
go.
Like
There you
these
go.
tiny things. So even if, right, financial abuse is a thing and it's in 98 to 99% of all cases, there are ways to get the information. So just hop on that free list, and you will get resources and information sent to your inbox.
Good. Perfect. That's amazing. And thank you so much for sharing this today. Sharing all your resources, your story, because this really lit me up today. And
Well, I'm so glad. Thank you so
yeah.
much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So, everyone, please, we're going to end the broadcast right now. So, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Angeline Mitchell. And this podcast episode will be uploaded in 2 weeks on Monday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. So, please, go to my podcast, Let's Break the Silence with Angeline, on Anchor FM, Spotify, Google, Apple, all the live streams. We would love a rating from you, feedback, and please share this live out. And right now, this broadcast is coming to a close. So, Sybil, please hang out with me in the green room for a minute. And we wish you
Absolutely.
all an amazing day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.